Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the What Worked For You podcast. Now, on today's show, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurism. Now, entrepreneurism is something that a lot of people have excitement about, passion about. They want to start their own business. They want to do the dream. They want to go out there and create this lifestyle for themselves. And they get out there and they go for it. They take that step. But unfortunately, more than 90% of people that start their own business fail. They fizzle out. That's a lot of people. What goes wrong? What is it that people are missing? Why do so many not get from step one just to even step two? Now, today, I've got an amazing guest. His name's David Abel. Now, David has quite the resume. He's been a CEO, COO, CTO, VP. He's been a consultant. He's probably got a few more acronyms that I don't even know. But the point is, he has seen a lot. He's been in corporate America. He's been a mega successful entrepreneur. He's built 3 businesses, sold them, was wildly successful. And as a result of all this, he knows what these trenches are. Not only does he know what they are, he knows how to succeed. He knows how to thrive in them. And he absolutely loves it. And he's tremendously passionate. So I'm excited to have him here. David, thank you for taking the time. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Frank.
Wonderful. Well, let's jump right in. In your social media, I noticed something that caught my attention. And that is, you said you enjoy the process of figuring out what's not working and addressing it. Now, this is something a lot of people do not enjoy, but yet you mentioned you enjoy complex issues on top of that. What attracts you to these types of situations, and why do you think so many people shy away from them?
Well, people always want the easy path, and it's hard to actually build a business when you're going the easy path. And what I've learned and what I've been helped me be successful is find out what's not working for people. What are they struggling with? And a lot of times those are very complex problems, and there's not a lot of people who can solve them. So if you go find the areas where there is complexity, that drives opportunity. But you have to make sure you understand and kind of crawl into the solution. And once you come up with an answer, then you can actually build a business around it.
So you just used a phrase that got my attention. Crawl into the solution. Can you elaborate on that? I haven't heard that phrase before.
People think that there's always just one answer to a complex problem. There never is. Every situation, every single customer, if you're in a service type business is where I spend a lot of my time, every customer has unique requirements. And so what you do, when I say crawl into the solution, never say there's one answer to a complex problem. Almost always there's not. There's always multiple. So you crawl in the solution by setting the guidelines, the core things that make the answer to the question. As an example, let's talk about something as simple as something systems around computer systems. If you go into an environment, assuming there's just all you need is your hammer to walk in there, every single customer has different platforms, different hard-coded things, different systems that they have had for 10, 15 years that are running on an AS400. Some systems are all brand new. So everywhere you go, it's something different. So when I say this works for even if you want to build a small little, I've done a payroll business and the exact same thing was wrong there. We had to payroll, everybody wanted stuff differently. So no matter how you do it, no matter what you do, you got to make sure you're not in love with your answers. You always have to be perspective to look at what you should do, listen more than you talk, and make sure that you're answering, because customers will work with you more likely and better if they know you're listening to their problems. You just don't come in and tell them what to do. You got to listen to what kind of problems they're having and all their specific details. And they'll work with you if they know you're trying and you're listening. They're less likely to work with you if all of a sudden you try to actually put that round peg in that square hole and they're looking at you, hey, it doesn't work that way here. And if you just say, I can make it work, you've lost your value to them. So that's kind of what I'm talking about is you got to crawl into the answers. Make sure you solution each time you come to a customer. It can be something simple as putting a porch on a house. As you know, there's always a lot of different issues that can actually come into play.
I like it. I like it. So you're taking the time to listen. You're really engaging. So when you're coming up effectively with multiple solutions, it sounds like this is really a time. This process takes time. It's not, and I bring that up because technology is a fast-moving business, but now we're saying as fast as technology is moving, let's slow down because we got to really get deeper here.
Yeah, if you don't, you'll do it again. I've learned that the hard way in a lot of different situations. You will do it over, or you will have to fix it, or they won't think what you did is the right solution. So you really have to, even when people want stuff done quickly, you don't have to go slow to do it right. And it doesn't take that long to listen, because if you're in the service business, it's all about the relationship first. Then the second is what you did. If you make sure you take care of the actual customer and the people, the system side of it, or even building anything or doing electrical work or whatever you're doing, if you take care of the people, the rest, they'll call you back because they like doing business with you. And I have a saying that people do business with friends more than they'll do business with people they don't know. So that's one thing you have to understand is, and I've always done in all of our businesses, is make sure you take care of the person who's paying you. If they're happy, you'll get repeat business, and that's what every entrepreneur should want.
Oh no, that's a great word, and that's true. I mean, repeat business, as we all know, easier to retain a customer than to get a new one. So no, absolutely. Now, piggybacking off of that, I've known you for a while now, and you're what I would call a high energy person. You certainly bring a lot of energy to the situations that you come across. Entrepreneurism by default requires a ton of energy. And in what ways would you say energy is most impactful as an entrepreneur? Like, is it decision making? Is it doing research? Is it in the relationship side? Like, in what way like, if you had one place you had to put all the energy to get the best bang for your buck, what would that be?
Well, that's a hard question to answer the way that you phrased it, because the way I see your question, if you're an entrepreneur, you're married to the business. There is no work week. You work Monday through Sunday, all day, every day. If you're on vacation with your family, you're thinking about your business. You're still on the phone. You're still answering emails. And it's a tenacity to get up and endure and to persevere. If you're not going to marry yourself to your business, especially the first 3 years, and do nothing but that and go at it full time all the time, you're not willing to do that, don't do it. Just don't be an entrepreneur. Most people are not willing to sacrifice their life to be successful. And you can listen to Elon Musk and all these other guys, and they say the exact same thing. Unless you're willing to be all in, that's it. And like I said, I focused on all of my businesses I've owned 100%, probably 80% of my time is on how I can better serve the customer. How can I make it to where we're getting asked back? How can I make sure the quality of what we deliver is the same every single time? And I did a lot of feedback from my customer. I said, hey, how did it go? Just give me an honest answer. If it's bad, let me know, because I want to make sure we do a better job. I never send them an email and ask for a survey, because people hate doing surveys. If you talk to them in a conversation, take them to lunch, you'll find out where the answers are. And you'll find out what those issues are. Even if they don't say it in a negative way, they might say it in a nice way. If you say, okay, that's something I need to work on. And also ask people to be involved with your business. I said, hey, would you like to be like this, a blog, do a conversation on how it went? I want you to talk about that bad situation. I want you to talk about how we handled it on the other side. And because not every company, if you see a company is 100% 5-star, the comments are fake. Everybody has problems. Nothing ever goes exactly right. Never does. It's just the way they work. And how you resolve those issues, how you respond to those issues, is what makes a good company. Let me give you an example. I don't know if you heard about it, but USAA is an actual bank that actually works just for the actual, people in the military. The one thing that they pride themselves on is customer service. And that's why people use them. They don't have all the bells and whistles that some of the other ones do. But I can tell you, I'm a lifelong customer because their customer service is what they really focus on. And it has been totally impressive. And I even did that in one of my first businesses, Logix One. We literally had a thing called Logix Care. And what that meant is when we were done, you paid an extra $2,000. You could call us for any problem associated with what we built for the next year. and we will jump in and figure it out remote to fix it. And everybody loved it. Everybody paid for it because it's kind of a little insurance policy. They also said it gave them the chance to make sure they remembered us. That way, the same people can always maintain it, so they felt comfortable. They didn't have to teach anybody when somebody new came in. There's all kinds of little tricks to the trade that I learned to do.
Oh no, that's a great word. That's a great word there. And piggybacking off what you just finished saying when you talked about Logix Care, there's all types of services like that in the world where a service provider is going to offer a certain, hey, for a few extra bucks, we're going to basically take care of you. But yet, a number of people don't opt into that, and they elect to, I can do it myself, right? They'll take that route. Like, why is that, in your opinion? Why do people? Perhaps is it that they don't value the service side of it enough, or because we know that if you do it yourself, you can do it, but somehow, some way, something will go wrong, and I'd say the majority of the time you sit back and kick yourself, going, "Man, I should have paid extra bucks."
Let me explain why everything I'm telling you is kind of it's a combination to a successful business. Because if you have the structured relationship and they believe what you're saying is true, and they like working with you, they're more likely to sign up for that. How likely are you to pay for that extended warranty service on that refrigerator? Because when you try to use it, it doesn't work, or they don't show up, or they don't come, or what they come with is inferior product. Everybody's so used to warranties, they don't service them well. They just take your money, and then they won't show up for 2 weeks or a month, or they won't call back. People are used to getting kind of messed up and then not getting the value out of those warranties. That's why I'm telling you, it's all about the relationship. And if they believe in you and they like you and they know they have your personal number, they're a lot more likely to sign up for a service like that.
Wow, I had not thought of it that way, but that makes sense. As you know, I'm in real estate, and those extended warranties are, it's very rare that you get the value out of them.
They don't show up. You don't. And that's the thing. If anybody could get the value and people, knew them and talked to them, and the person did a lot of work to keep those relationships, you'd buy it. I'd buy it. If somebody I trusted, that, I understood, I talked to the owner of the company, I'd do it. And sometimes in those situations, as an example, as an entrepreneur, for those who are watching, one of the things you have to do is say, okay, I tell you what, I'll give you this warranty. If you don't call us in the first year, I'll give you half your money back. That hurts on a financial level, but what it does, it said you can either do that or you can apply it to your next year. What usually happens is you have to take that risk as an entrepreneur. It says, okay, instead of giving your money back, I'm going to give you the next year free, and that's at half value, and I'm going to apply it to your next year's coverage. A lot of people say, yeah, that's okay, that's fine, I've already spent the money, you can keep it, but you have to be able to deliver, take the risk if they need those, say it's a $2,000, you have to give them $1,000 back. You have to give them $1,000 back. No, you do. And but then he'll tell other people around you, because he'll tell his friends, hey, you're having troubles, you need to call, Abel, or you need to call Frank. They have a service, you need it. And believe me, they're good guys. And that goes a long way. One person on a good thing tells like 1 or 2 people. If there's something bad happens, they'll tell 10 people. And that's where, it gets bad. And I just thought of something, Frank. I want to say it so I don't forget. It's a little saying I use. I do a lot of mentorships for people on the business side, and I tell them this. And good news. Let me say it like this: bad news is easier to tell right away. Good news, if you don't tell right away, gets less valuable over time. So if you have bad news, you need to tell the customer immediately. People like to put off bad news, and they don't want to deliver the information to the customer. But the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Also, if you wait on good news, the less valuable it becomes over time. So immediate action, immediate delivery of information is what everybody wants to know. That's really helped us in all of our businesses that we've done.
Wow. So good or bad, share the news, share it quick.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you think that doesn't happen because people just don't like to deliver bad news, and
yes.
kind of want to fix it before it becomes, because you'll see that side. Well, let me fix it. I don't want to tell someone because they're gonna get upset and da da da.
The thing is, you got to, because the thing is, you probably can't fix it. And no matter what, they're going to find out anyway. And if they find out anyway from somebody else, and they lose the trust. Remember, everything's about building trust with your customers. And so those kind of open conversations, hey, we got a problem, whatever the problem is, here's the situation, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're doing to deal with it. Sorry, it's going to cost an extra $20 or whatever, thousands or whatever it's going to be. You have to make sure you deliver that news.
That's gold right there. That is gold. Deliver the news, good or bad, but deliver it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you may get some hits, but that's okay because
they'll trust you. They'll understand. They know you're not lying to them or trying to hide it or anything else. It makes a big difference. It really has been a cornerstone of all the businesses, and it's served us well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit, in the early days of being an entrepreneur, you were talking about being married to your business. What were some of those sacrifices back in the earlier days?
Time. Just time is the highest price commodity and value in anybody's life as an entrepreneur, and having time. Time to get the work done, time to spend time with family, time to make sure you're having help with your kids. But I had a phenomenal partner, my wife, and it was with the children. I didn't spend a lot of time. I was traveling a lot, doing a lot of different things all over the country. So during certain years, I was not around that much. I tried to be home at least one day for a Sunday or something, but that's a sacrifice. It also, you sacrifice your health in some respects, and people have to understand you can't go into the entrepreneurship in an unhealthy way, because you're more than likely going to get unhealthy because you're traveling, you're eating fast food, you're doing whatever you do, and it's insane. It's literally, if you want to, people fantasize the Elon Musk and all the people who have been successful. And there's so many bodies on the ground, like you said, for 90% of the people that fail. And I've known a lot of people that have failed. But what I've seen about them is they weren't married to their business. They didn't have that tenacity and that energy. I mean, if you're a massive introvert, very hard for you to start a business and do it unless you're buying a franchise and you're just going through the motions. And you can do that. But if you're trying to start something unique and go after it, yeah, you have to be in it full time, be ready, at least the first 3 years. And please, everybody, don't expect to make money the first 3 years. Just don't expect to. If you can't do that, it's hard. Sometimes you can, but just don't expect it.
Wow, 3 years. That's a sobering thought when you think about it.
Decent money. To start putting in money where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable. It's usually 3 years. And let me say this too. One thing I tell some of the people I do, help. You make the worst decisions in your life when you have the most money in your pocket, because it's easy to buy things. I got the money to do it. Let me just try this. Let me do this. Next thing, and you make the best decisions when you don't have any money. So always lay the groundwork as if you're broke, is what I tell everybody who's asked me how to do this. Always act as if you're broke, because if you don't, you will be.
Wow.
I guarantee you.
Wow. So just choose to be broke in spirit, so to speak.
Spirit, yes. Yeah. But you will make some dumb decisions when you got a lot of money. So people go out and get loans and stuff from banks, and they're looking at it and say they got $1 million sitting in the bank. No, we need this, we need that. They start buying all this stuff. It's not a good idea. It doesn't work out that well. You got to act as if every dollar matters, especially in the beginning. But the one thing that always happens, and my good partner always says this, there's always a hole in the boat. Always a hole in the boat that's eating the money. So no matter how much money you put in the boat, it leaks out the bottom. Somewhere, somehow, there's people with hands out that are going to take that money. So you got to do everything you can to make sure you keep as much money in the boat as possible.
Well, I can relate to that in the real estate world. There's lots of holes. I've always, and kind of piggybacking off of that and tying it back to sacrifice, there are times where I've felt like, and I'd be interested in your thought, where you feel like all you're doing is plugging holes. Would you say that's one of the sacrifices then, is just accepting you are always plugging holes to some degree?
You're fielding problems nonstop, and every day is a new problem that you didn't even know existed. Whether it's some bizarre tax bill about you have to pay taxes on the property of the couch you bought in the office, that for whatever reason you have to pay $4 of tax on that in certain cities and counties. And believe me, that is true. You get those kind of problems. Customers calling and complaining about things that you didn't even do, but you have to deal with them. I mean, it's constant. All right, you got to buy something you know you need it, and they're expensive. That's what I'm talking about. That's what keeps you busy nonstop as an entrepreneur, because there's nobody to complain to. You're it. The buck stops with you. Period. There's nobody else that's involved. So all decisions are CEO, CIO, CFO, all in one, especially in the beginning. Unless you want to get money from somebody, and understand, I've dealt with VCs before too. Understand, 50% of your time is going to be managing the VC. The other 50% will be managing your business and your people. And employees' problems start with the first employee. Understand that as well.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to hire help right away. And all of a sudden it's a new role that a lot of times people are not prepared for.
Mm-hmm. Because they don't own the business. They're just an employee. And your expectations are they're going to have the same zeal and belief and tenacity and vision as you do. And most normally they don't. It can, but normally they don't. So your expectations are way higher than they're willing to give. They're not going to give every weekend. They're not going to give every evening. They're not going to do it. And you're going to be upset because things aren't getting done to your liking.
No, that's true. That's true. So along that same vein, when you were building your first company, uh, you'd mentioned the travel and the time, but beyond that, what were some of the challenges you went through? Like when you went into it, were you thinking, I'm building a company, and like, where were you going? What was the direction? Like, what was that experience?
Well, it was back in the .com days, and there wasn't a ton of value-added resellers of VAR in the technical term out there, and we saw a huge opportunity with the year 2000 coming. The year 2000. I'm trying to figure out when that was. And that was it. The biggest challenge we had was we didn't have any money. So we went into the business, broke, and started putting our houses up, put credit cards up to fund stuff, and then just to get credit with the banks and get credits with the actual distribution people that you have to deal with. They want lines of credit and your credit, and you can only buy so much because you can only buy, let's say, $200,000 worth of equipment, and you have a sale of $580,000. Well, then you can't buy that equipment from distribution because you don't have the credit to do it. So then you have to learn about going off on the AR payment. You have to go on what's called the actual distribution companies take 5% of the actual value on the margin and let them do the actual transaction. You learn all kinds of ways of making it happen, and that's what takes all the time because you're scrambling to figure it out. So that's the challenges. That's the things that were kind of crazy that I didn't even know existed that we had to figure out. It was wild. I learned a lot in my first business. It was a learning because I didn't know any of this. I'm telling you, I didn't know any of it. We shouldn't have made it. We just did. Yeah, very
well, a little luck never hurt anybody, that's for sure. But so let's talk about that luck, though. You sold that business, as I understand it.
Did. Yeah.
Like, at any point, were you thinking that you're building to sell, or is that just something that came up one day and it sounded good, take the payday and run?
Even when we did the deal, we didn't know why the heck they were even buying us. Like, why are they even doing this? I mean, I don't know. But you never build a business to sell other than the structure of it. If you know you want to get out, and just so everybody's listening, if you want to be able to sell the business easier, doesn't mean you can't, easier, you have to make it a C Corp, a traditional corp, not like a partnership, because you can sell it, you have to do an asset purchase, and there's a lot of other different things you have to go through. For an easy acquisition or what they call a roll-up, it's much better if it's a big C corporation, a normal corp. The problem with that is you don't get a lot of the benefits of doing it as an LLC, taxed as a partnership, with flow through and other things you can do from a tax basis standpoint. So the best thing to do is to make sure when you're setting stuff up, you have to go talk to a tax attorney, and they'll ask you a ton of questions on what your goals are, and then they'll tell you how to do it. And you can convert. Just so people who don't know, you can convert from an LLC to something else, but you can only do it within a 5-year time span. So if you do it, you can't do it again. There's all kinds of tax consequences, and there's tax consequences when you make the change, and very, very complex. So make sure you really understand what you want to do with it long term before you start.
Now, when you're talking about a C corp, is that a true C corp, or what if it was an LLC taxed
No,
as a? So it's got to be a true thing.
yeah, it can't be an LLC because an LLC is an LLC, but they have three different tax options. You can be taxed as a C or a P or an S. But if you go into a full corporation, it's just like IBM Corp. It's a big company corporation, and some small companies should do that, especially if they have inventory. You're going to stock inventory. You're going to do different things. Then there are some reasons you'd want to do that, and definitely
Wow.
never go alone. Never make your own decisions. You need to spend the money on the experts before you start.
Starting with the end in mind.
Yeah, and never do the payroll yourself. I'll say that to everybody listening. Let somebody else handle payroll. I've seen businesses, and make sure they're reputable. I had a friend who had an actual really successful restaurant, and he was paying a company to do their payroll. They were real cheap. He didn't know why they were so cheap. He's using them. Well, the reason was they weren't sending the tax money to the IRS. They were keeping it. And so after a year of him paying them for, they had staff of like 50 people, all that money, they just disappeared. And so then he had to pay all that back tax because he's ultimately responsible. And it killed the restaurant. It just destroyed it.
Wow. Tax on 50 people. That's a lot.
Yeah, don't underestimate making sure the partners you use have a lot of references and they're well done. Do research on them. Make sure you just don't use the lowest cost. They're usually the lowest cost for a reason.
No, that's a good word right there. So you sold the first company.
Yep.
Didn't even know why you were getting bought. That's a fascinating thought.
Like, all right.
But obviously it was very profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So when you sold that first company, obviously you went through all these growing pains, you built this company, obviously somebody bought it, so they saw tremendous value in it. What was like one of the failures you had building that company that proved to be instrumental when you started the next one and the next one?
Learning how to. The one thing we did in the first business is we had 4 of us starting it. Is we did everything, literally everything ourselves. But what that does, if you're spending time handling small minutia items, you're not spending time going out and talking to customers or dealing with customers. You cannot lose contact with the business as an entrepreneur. And the business is about serving a customer, and whatever that is, no matter how you're doing it. So in the next company, I made sure I had staff that was handling the minutia and some of that stuff, and I had to pay for it. But they were quality people. You got to make sure that your initial employees have to be very quality, well-known resources. Don't take chances on the first ones. Every hire is a 50-50 crapshoot, but it's got to be people you have history with. In the next company, I actually had people do some of the base service stuff so I could be more in touch with the customers. And it made a big difference. And I never lost touch with the customers. I always did drive-bys to my guys. We had about 16 people doing the services work. And I always went by all the customers, and these are big companies. And went in, just said, hey, took them to lunch, see how things were going, see what I can do, how I can help. And I always sold more work. I just constantly sold more work. Because I love the fact that not after we did the deal that I wasn't going away. So that's what I learned is don't get caught up in the minutia work yourself. Don't do the bookkeeping yourself. Don't do some of the payroll services yourself. Don't put things in letters. If you want to send out a bunch of mailers, get some kids or pay a kid, $10 an hour or whatever to do it for you so you can do other stuff. A lot of people lose sight that time is the most expensive thing. If you're not using your time wisely, you're not treating the business wisely.
We're back to that idea of time driving everything, really.
It's always about time.
Always about time. That's good. That's good. So speaking of time, I love the segue. We got some great segues here. It's like you're reading my mind. And but you're not, like, right? Like, so, technology, you've been in the technology service for a lot of time,
Hmm.
and time has sped up because of technology, is what a lot of people argue, rightfully so. And now it's like we're getting notifications constantly. It's like, getting a breath. It's almost to the point where if you step away just to slow down, it's almost viewed as a sin by some. But the reality is the human body hasn't changed. Like, we're trying to adapt to this technology and this time being sped up and life as a whole speeding up, that it kind of creates this sense of overwhelm. What would you say to people, knowing that technology is not going to stop? More knowledge is coming online constantly, faster than we can think. Like, how can people cope with this, stay up to date so that you're not experiencing fear of missing out, but at the same time, not get caught up in the overwhelm, you know, stay current without the stress of, oh my gosh, it's like,
The only thing I can say to that, and I don't know if I have the answer. I don't think anybody does, but I've been asked this before. What I've done is to hyper focus. So I hyper focus on the things that are important to the business, are important to me personally for like home or whatever, and I just ignore the rest and be okay with not knowing everything. Make sure you have an outlet to somebody who, if you need to find out, you can ask somebody who is hyper focused on that area. Like the example is you. If I want to ask about how real estate's doing, I don't try to keep up. Call you, say, hey, what do you see going on? And I get a quick understanding. So my answer to your question, very simply, is hyper focus on the things you need to make your business successful. Literally ignore the rest during your entrepreneurial startup phases. After that, who knows? I'm just saying how you can make sure you don't become overwhelmed. And things like payroll and payroll changes. That's why I'm telling everybody not to do that, because it literally changes every quarter. And I mean, it changes. And the laws change, and you can get in deep trouble. And overtime pay, not overtime pay, state changes their rules, or you got to pay insurance for 1099 where you don't have to do it in Georgia, but you have to in California and New York and all those things. You got to have somebody that they're hyper focused on that area. Then you ask for advice and not try to be everything and know everything. If you try to know everything on all those aspects, you don't have enough time to do it. You just don't.
mm. So I gotta ask, because you had kind of a hot button issue there, and that is, why is it a lot of service provide, and this is just my experience, because you talked about payroll. So for example, I recently spoke with someone about payroll because we use a third party provider, and it seems to have gone well. I haven't really had hardly any issues, so that's been nice.
That's good.
But I talked with, for example, a tax person once, because it's like I'm constantly being flooded by tax people. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of them on social media. And I'll ask the question, just, hey, small company, should we do our own payroll? And like what you just said, which I completely agree with, is why in the world would you want to keep up with it? But what I find, and I'm not picking on the tax industry, I'm just using my personal example from my experience, is a lot of these people will give me 5 different ways on how I can do it. And
Correct.
so, based on what you were just saying, that's probably not great advice.
No.
But why, and I illustrate that example, say, why is it that finding quality advice from really solid advisors that truly understand your needs, why is that hard? Because in my experience, both in when I was in IT and now real estate, and I've also been in music, that is a thread I've seen, is good advice is hard to find. What are your thoughts on that?
You have to make sure that the person you're getting advice from doesn't have anything to sell. So if you're getting advice from somebody who literally, when you get advice, they're going to make money off that advice, You know, the advice that there's a reason they're saying what they're saying. That's like getting advice from a money manager. He's hey, I got all this brand. I got a way to help you out. I got these brand new investments. Well, he gets better commissions on these new investments, so that's why he's telling you he needs it. So that's why I told you the friendships. Uh, this is how I've always done it. I never actually trust advice 100% unless I know they're not making anything from it. That's it. And the bad news about the actual tax and the payroll and stuff, the problem is with tax, there is 7 ways to do everything. You give your taxes, you can do this if you got some money to do it. Give your taxes to 3 different tax providers and do it. I guarantee you it'll all be different. The tax returns will all be different. They won't even be close. I'm talking they won't even be close because it's that complex and that in need of an overhaul that it's people just can't. There is too many options. And that's why it's hard to understand why you're giving good. I think it's all good advice. It just depends on what the outcome you want and how you want to show things. And honestly, at the end of the day, I don't even know if it matters. I really don't. I've had a lot of fun with taxes. And I can tell you, it is just a crapshoot. And you can get somebody coming, because they haven't even processed year 2021 yet. I heard for a lot of taxes. They're still going through them. So it's like, I don't know. That's a great question on that. And I can't really give you a solid answer for your thing because I don't know if anybody's figured that out. I really don't know.
Yeah, no, you know, it's just interesting because it's, you know, one one of my coaches says something that I love. Like he's big on having coaches, and I agree with him. And I did business a few years without coaches, and that's when all the mistakes happened. Like, and it was just like, so now I'll never do business without a coach again. I think that was I was like committing a temporary suicide without knowing you were doing it.
And he's not trying to sell you anything, is he?
Yeah, well, he does sell stuff, but it didn't matter because it resonated so true. In that scenario, it was like it's so true that it doesn't even really even matter at that point.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That was when all the mistakes happened. And I sit there, but he says he'll go to his coaches and 99, and he feels like he's had them for so long, he knows 99% what they're saying. But he still asks them anyway because the 1% is what'll get you.
Yeah. Yep. And those little things cost a lot of money typically. They do. So weird. That's the holes in the boat theory I was telling you about. There's always holes in the boat. You know, water's coming on. You don't know why. So you gotta pay attention to them.
It's almost like there's business models geared around every little hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. But that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? But you got to take the good with the bad. So
yeah.
Wow. No, good stuff. So let me ask you this. You've built up all these skills, right, through all these different roles, and you've had multiple exits, and you've had all this success. What would you say now is one of your greatest strengths?
Knowing what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the only thing I can say that I did, you always have your first 2 deals in the bag before you start your business. I don't know if I've already told you that. That's a founding principle I have. You don't start your business until you actually have already sold 2 of whatever you're doing. You got to have them already sold. People already willing to pay, wanting to do it, because you just don't start a business without any customers. You just don't. Bad idea. And I've used that methodology for everything we've done, and it's been great because that gives you your start. That's how you know, and you don't jump off the cliff. You have to have your normal job, and then you have to do your side thing. You got to go ahead and try it. If you just jump off the cliff, you got that issue. So that's one skill. The other skill is knowing how to make a bet, because no matter how good you think you are, there's going to come a time in your business when you have to make a bet. You just have to. You have to spend that money. You have to do this one thing. You really don't have the money, but if you don't do it, the whole thing collapses. You got to be willing to step out there because it's going to happen. And if you are not willing to do that, and really put it all on the line, you can't. You shouldn't do it. It's too hard. That's why people step out. So, well, I didn't have the ability to get a loan. Well, you didn't try hard enough. You can get loans. It's just what you're willing to give up to get it. So that's You can ask Elon Musk and look at his history and what he did. He's almost gone bankrupt 3, 4 times, like literally nothing kind of a situation. And he said, I just got lucky and we made it. You know, and because Elon Musk wouldn't even be a person if he had just one thing back in the early days of PayPal. You know, we wouldn't even know who he is.
Wow, wow. And you mentioned something that, and I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I have heard it said before that a lot of entrepreneurs have had those that, and this is from people that have ultimately succeeded, that every successful, I don't know about every, but every successful entrepreneur I've talked to about this that appreciates the success they've had has had not necessarily a near bout with bankruptcy, but they've had a very dark moment.
Oh,
And
yeah.
because of that very dark moment and surviving, and it might have took years to get through it. Like it wasn't like, oh, we have a problem next week. It's fixed.
No,
Half a decade later, I mean, sometimes I'm like, wow, because I think about some of our challenges, and I'm like, wow, these people went through that. They're still here. They're still breathing.
yeah. And payroll shows up every 2 weeks. No matter the weather, no matter what is going on, payroll always shows up every 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. You always got to pay it. You have employees. So make sure you realize that. Have lines of credit, have relationships with banks, or it gets hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. So as you went from one company to the next, to today, and you touched on this a little bit earlier when you were talking about you were traveling, but now you've gone through multiple businesses. How has work-life balance evolved? Because that's a concept people preach out there, but the reality is there's no hard, fast rule. So it sounds like in your case, it evolved. So tell us a little bit about how that evolved.
I just don't. I just don't do as. I'm not as engaged as an entrepreneur as I used to be. I'm kind of semi-retired. I don't know if it ever involved, Frank. My wife would tell you when I start a new business, she hates it because I'm gone. I literally turn into a different person, and I'm hyper focused on the business, and that's every waking moment. If I'm not working, I'm up here, in my office, figuring stuff out, calling people, paying bills, finding out what's going on with the money, different things. Um, I don't know if I've ever figured out work life balance, and I don't. I hate to say this, if you're not willing, like I told you before, I don't think you can. So the guy, it was one of the CEO of Samsung. Now was it Samsung or somebody? He goes. They asked him if he would start the business over again if he had the choice. He said, "Absolutely not. I wouldn't do this again." It wasn't Samsung. It was a small. It was Nvidia. The CEO of Nvidia. He said, "No, I would never. If I could start over, no, I wouldn't do it." He's I sacrificed my entire life. He says, even in a company like that, I mean, it's still, people don't realize CEOs in these big companies, they work all the time. And the risk that they're under is unbelievable. I watch a lot of Jordan Peterson, and he talked about, he goes, I would never want to be those people because he had them in from a psychological perspective. He did a lot of work with them. He goes, these people literally work nonstop, nonstop. Every waking moment is their job. He goes, and it's a hard life, and only certain people can pull it off. Because not many people are willing to sacrifice that, and a lot of them you don't hear about them after they actually, leave their job. But most of them usually have a lot of health issues, massive health issues. That's one of the reasons they kind of retire. They just can't keep it up. They just can't work at that pace anymore.
Yeah, just too much demand after a while.
Yeah. It's the
And,
best thing.
and
I want to be negative. It's the best thing I've ever done. I want every person alive to go through it so they understand and you learn so much. And it's the only way, in my opinion, to really generate wealth, unless you're just lucky and have a great sales job or something where you can generate a lot of wealth. But there's a difference between making good money and creating wealth. Wealth is something you pass down to your children. That's entrepreneurship is the only way that I know to pull that off.
mm, so then looking back, would you do it all again?
I don't know. My wife asked me the other day. She goes, "Would you want to do that again?" I go, "You know what? I don't think so. I don't think I'd do it again." I go, "But that's because I'm comfortable now. It might be different if I didn't have a lot of money and I barely made any money and I was working a corporate job, for somebody else. But I don't know. I know I would do it differently. I do know that,
Mhm.
and I'd build a business that generate money that goes into an estate, and I would probably never sell it. I would just make it to where it generated enough money where I could build an estate wealth to pass on to my children. Because the older you get, the more you worry about your kids if you have children. Everything else becomes noise. It literally does.
Oh, that's true. And when we have kids, and yeah, I found myself kind of thinking along those same lines lately. It's like, things I used to get excited. There's still a few things, right? Bucket list items that you want to get done, but now it's like the kids this and the kids that, and just to see them have it a little bit better than we did. So one last question. After all these years, you've helped countless people, right? Multiple businesses, different parts of the industries, different roles. And so you've had the opportunity to help to so many people. And but now moving forward, and you'd mentioned you were, semi-retiring at this point. What's most important to you now?
Building something that I can pass on to my children. That is my focus. I am actively working on some businesses that can be just recurring model businesses that just help people or help an industry or help a specific demographic. And it's a service that is done right, done properly, and it'll generate a small amount of income to build an estate plan. That way, when I pass away, it gives something to my children after I'm gone. That's my goal. And my wife. If I live beyond her, I want to make sure she's taken care of and has something that's going to generate income continuously and hopefully long term build wealth for my children. That's my sole focus right now.
Love it, love it, love it. Wonderful. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you.
Welcome and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone that listen, I mean, so many gold nuggets, so many amazing insights. So if you're looking to start a business, you might want to. In fact, I would encourage you to listen to this one 3, 4, 5 times because there's a lot of notes. I'm going to go back and I got to take notes because there's just a lot of serious lessons that really give you perspective, tremendous impact, and wow, I mean, it's an awesome road to take, but it's a serious commitment. So, David, thank you again. I appreciate it. And if you want to connect with David, he is out on social media, so feel free to reach out to him. I'll put some links down below in the description. And thank you again.